Oh boy, Star Wars fans. A new leak on Reddit claiming to have knowledge about the behind-the-scenes workings of JJ Abrams, Lucasfilm, Disney, and Star Wars Episode 9, The Rise of Skywalker, paints a pretty crazy picture. Hashtag release the JJ cut is now trending in the United States. Wow. Here we go. What's up, everybody? It's Josh. Welcome back to the channel. A couple of things real quick. If you could chop like, that would be great. And also, shout out to Ryan from RK Outpost for bringing this to my attention. Ryan and I have been kind of chatting back and forth on Twitter ever since I did that hater stream with Jeremy from Geeks and Gamers a couple of months ago now. And yeah, Ryan's fandom menace, but he's one of the good ones. And also, real quick, before we get into this leakage, which is very wild, I know that the fandom drama, Grey Order, fandom menace, all that kind of stuff, it isn't for everybody. No worries. Most of the content isn't going to deal with that, but I will be doing a live stream this Sunday for Star Wars Sunday where I'm going to just talk to a bunch of different people about some real drama that's going on within the Star Wars fan base. So if you're into that sort of stuff or you want to see what's going on, come back on Sunday. Okay, so let's get into this. This is wild, man. This is like absolutely wild. I don't even have a script for this. You know what I mean? Some things when they happen out there, you're like, I don't need a script. Let's just talk about this. This is wild. And this is indeed a Reddit post on the Saltier Than Crate subreddit with someone that claims to have sources that worked on The Rise of Skywalker. Now, caveat, grain of salt, warning, we don't know if this is true or not. So for now, we have to treat it as sort of a rumor and or a leak. But I will just tell you that, if you're one of those people that just automatically discounts Reddit leaks, I hope that after we realized that we knew the entire plot for The Rise of Skywalker, that maybe you're going to take Reddit stuff just a little bit more seriously. And by my own Reddit logic, the amount of upvotes that this thing has would lead me to believe that it's at the very least not complete bullcrap. However, the fact that it's in Saltier Than Crate and not in Star Wars leaks or Star Wars speculation is a little bit suspect to me. I don't really know who the user Ego Shoppy, the Baron Administrator, is. I don't know very little about this person, but I do know for sure that there are plenty of people behind the scenes for Star Wars that are leaking information out there because, frankly, everything revolving around this movie and the end to the sequel trilogy has been a mess. It's been very messy. And yeah, so we'll get into that. Also, buckle in, grab a soda or something. This is a lengthy post, and I'm going to read every single thing that is in this Reddit post. Okay, here we go. The post is titled, "Here's What I've Been Told from a Source That Worked on The Rise of Skywalker. Since shortly after the release, I've been corresponding with someone who worked closely on the production of The Rise of Skywalker and works for one of the major companies I cannot disclose here. It's likely Bad Robot, but he doesn't say that. I've verified the source to my satisfaction. To protect the source, I am rewording what we spoke about over the last 2 weeks and am submitting it to you in bullet point format I have written based on what they told me. The TLDR is that they were upset with the final product of The Rise of Skywalker and wanted to share their perspective on how it went down and where it went wrong." Now again, I'm someone that really likes The Rise of Skywalker, but I am not in denial of what the film is, and it's certainly rushed, it's certainly jammed together, and there's certainly a lot of things that raise eyebrows within that movie and within some of the things we even heard in the leaks. So what's crazy about this whole situation is we know for sure that there was a lot of meddling and a lot of changes and things happening because we were literally hearing more in the leaks than we actually even see in the film. But anyway, let's get to the bullet points. Number one, the leakers for The Rise of Skywalker had an agenda and are tied to Disney directly. My source confessed that they have an agenda as well, in that they struggle with ignoring what's been happening to someone who they think doesn't deserve it. I believe that's JJ. Which again makes me think this is someone from Bad Robot, but let's just read all these points and then we'll talk about what we think it means. JJ always treated everyone on and offset with respect, so my source's agenda is that what Disney has done to JJ and how much they screwed him over should be something people at least are aware of, whether you like him as a filmmaker or not. Disney was one of the studios who were in that Bad Robot bidding war last year. Disney never had much interest in Bad Robot as a company, but they did in JJ because they saw Warner Brothers, who JJ ended up going to, as a major threat. JJ is very successful at bringing franchises back like Mission Impossible, Star Trek, and Star Wars. Warner Brothers is struggling with DC, and aside from Wonder Woman, DC is still seen as a bit of a joke in the current state. by the general audiences. I think that's what they mean there. Warner Brothers wants J.J. Abrams for some DC projects, and my sources said that the generation Star Wars is the MCU. Marvel's biggest threat is DC, and basically, I'm going to paraphrase the bullet point here. Basically, they're really nervous about JJ going over to DC and being their biggest competition for Marvel films. Essentially, there's this conspiratorial thing going on here that this leaker is suggesting that they believe Disney was purposely trying to make JJ look bad to really upset the potential of that happening over at Warner Brothers. My source mentioned this shortly after the premiere, saying the Rise of Skywalker we saw last night was not the Rise of Skywalker we thought we worked on. JJ was devastated and blindsided by this. He's been feeling down over the last 6 months because of some of the ridiculous demands Disney had that changed his movie's story. While the scenes were shot and a lot of changes were made in post-production and the audio was re-recorded and altered, my sources said they've never seen anything like this happen before. He's the director and he wasn't in the know about what they were doing behind his back. Apparently, JJ felt threatened over the month leading up to the premiere. Ryan was never to do episode 9, despite some rumors that he was. JJ was brought back by Iger, not KK, that's Kathleen Kennedy. Disney insisted on more fan service, less controversy. JJ's original agreement when he signed on was indicating that he would have had way more creative control than he did on TFA. It became evident this wasn't the case only a couple of weeks into shooting when the trouble with meddling started. JJ wanted to do some scenes he thought were important, but Disney shut it down, citing budgetary reasons. In May of 2019, JJ argued that those scenes were crucial. He had to let go of one of the scenes. The other scene he insisted was approved at first. He did reshoots and additional photography in July. The new scene was shot at Bad Robot in October. This whole ending that will blow your mind was a part of this. Older actors were included like Hayden, Ewan, and Samuel, and anyone who wasn't animated. The Force ghosts weren't meant to be voices because they shot that footage on camera. The actors were in costumes. Rey was supposed to be surrounded by the Force ghosts to serve as sort of a barrier between her and the Sith surrounding them. My sources think, but can't 100% confirm, that this is because of China. It's an office talk of sorts. Some VFX people claimed they got a list of approved shades of blue that they could use on the Luke Force Ghost. Cutting this out was when the bad blood turned into a nightmare for JJ because the movie he was making was suddenly unrecognizable to him in almost every way. My source knows JJ well enough to know that he's just not the yelling type, but apparently in a meeting he yelled something along the lines of, "Why don't you just put directed and written by Lucasfilm then?" My source wasn't present for that exchange, but he knows some who were. Disney demanded they shoot some scenes that would have things in it for merchandise. They Fly Now was one of them. It's also JJ's least favorite scene. At a November screening of a 2-hour and 37-minute cut, he cringed, groaned, and laughed when the scene was on. My sources say that JJ is most likely not joking when he said "you're right" in the interviews when asked about the Rise of Skywalker criticism. JJ's original early November cut was 3 hours and 2 minutes long. In January, JJ suggested that they turn this into 2 films. My sources told me that this was before Terrio mentioned it in an interview a couple of days ago, or rather, I think he's saying that his sources mentioned this to him even before the new interview. But Disney said no, and apparently JJ was content with making it a 3-hour film. Over a period of 9 months, JJ started realizing that one by one, his ideas and whole scenes were being thrown out the window or entirely altered by people who have no business meddling with the creatives. They were not on the same page when it came to creative decisions, and it became obvious that Disney had an agenda. In addition to wanting to please shareholders, Disney could afford messing up episode 9 for the sake of the bigger picture when it came to protecting things unrelated to episode 9. The cut JJ eventually and hesitantly agreed to in early December was 2 hours and 37 minutes long. It wasn't the cut we saw, which he wouldn't have approved of, and which is 2 hours and 22 minutes long. Apart from the Force Ghost, there were other crucial and emotional scenes missing. The cut they released looked chopped and taped back together with weak Scotch tape. JJ's Words. The movie opened with Rey training. Her first scene with Rose was shortly after Rey damaged BB-8 during training. Rose made a silly joke about how Poe was going to kill her for damaging BB-8. There was a moment where Rey took a minute to process what just happened, and she saw the vision during training. She looked distressed and worried. The next scene was noise As the Falcon was landing, Rey runs over. The two women who kissed at the end were visible in the shot, and they were holding hands. One of them ran towards the Falcon as it landed. Kylo on Mustafar's scene was about 2 minutes longer. There was a moment where Kylo seemed a bit dizzy, and his vision was shown as blurry for a second, almost as if time half stopped. While everyone in the background was slow-mo fighting, Kylo hears Vader's breathing, then shakes his head, and after a time goes back to moving at a normal pace. He jumps back into the battle. The scene from the trailer where he knocks the guy down, which did end up in the movie later. They cut some of the scenes from the light speed skipping segment. Some of the planets that were cut were Kashyyyk, Naboo, and Kamino. Jaina was apparently originally confirmed to be Lando's daughter. Rey not only healed Kylo's face scar when she killed Kylo as she healed Ben, Kylo ceased to exist when Rey healed him. My source mentioned that some people assume it was Han Solo who healed him, but that wasn't true, and it wasn't Han Solo. That was Leia using her own memories as well as Ben's to create a physical manifestation of his own thoughts to nudge him towards what he needed to do. That was her own way of communicating that to him, and it wasn't possible without her dying in the process. She made the ultimate sacrifice for her son, and this flew over people's heads in the Disney cut. In the late November cut, which was the last cut JJ approved of, there were scenes with Rose and Rey still. JJ wanted to give her more meaningful arc. Disney felt that that was too risky. My source mentioned that Chris Terrio said that it was because they had Leia scenes, and this is only partially true because she had 4 other scenes, including 2 with Rey/Disney that Leia were not in. Finn wanted to tell Rey something that he always meant to be Force sensitivity. In the 3-hour cut, it is explicitly stated. There was a moment when Jannah and he were running on top of that Star Destroyer, and Finn needed to unlock or move something, and he force moved it and acted surprised when it happened. This was replaced with a CGI BB-8, fixing whatever he needed to fix on there. Babu Frick was nearly cut because some execs at Disney thought he would be the new Jar Jar. They were really surprised that people love him this much. He was JJ's idea and was created in collaboration with some artists and puppeteering. The personality was all JJ. There were a bunch of scenes with Rey and Kylo separately that went through quiet moments of reflection that they had to deal with what was going on. On her part, her going through the realizations that there's something sinister about her past, him going through regret and remorse, but trying to shut it out. My sources said that the Kylo scenes were especially amazing because Adam Driver's performance and how he managed to portray that inner turmoil. It provided much more context and added deeper meaning to both of his battles with Rey and the final redemption arc at the end. It didn't happen so suddenly, and it was more structured than what we got. The Kylo Rey scene in which Ben dies was at least 4 minutes longer with more dialogue. Ben was always supposed to die. Source also added that if he wasn't, then he might have been in an earlier draft, which they haven't read. The final draft they read included Lando, and the first few didn't. The Reylo kiss and Ben's death were not a part of the reshoots. It was a part of re-editing. Even the cut that JJ thought was coming out earlier this month had a longer version of that scene in which more was shown in the theatrical cut. JJ was against the Reylo kiss, or Reylo in general. This was Disney's attempt to please both sides of the fandom. JJ was not happy with where The Last Jedi took the story. The final result is a mix of that story and the story told by Disney and whoever they tried to impress, certainly not the fans. JJ is gutted over the final result. Star Wars means a lot to him, and he had to sacrifice large chunks of story in The Force Awakens, but he was promised more creative control on The Rise of Skywalker, and instead, the leash they had him on was only tightened as time went on. A source said that this is the one franchise and the one piece of his work that he didn't want to mess up, and instead it turned out to be his worst nightmare. When he found out that he was blindsided with the cut they presented, he said, "What the F?" And Kylo was fighting the Knights of Ren at the end, and Williams' music to that was used for it, but it was not what he wanted at all. He seemed to think it was out of place. The JJ cut still exists and will always exist. We most likely will never see it unless someone accidentally leaks it. Okay, so wow, there's a lot in there. Now, let me just kind of be frank with my feelings about this. This partially reads to me as someone just picking up out there all of the things that people have problems with and kind of crafting a narrative in which none of that had to do with JJ. Because frankly, it really reads that way. So I have trouble believing it completely. However, I do think that there's a lot to this. I mean, at the bottom line, we all know after looking at that film, and even someone like me who really likes it, like I really like that movie, I can acknowledge that it feels really disjointed, and there's a lot of stuff that's just kind of thrown throughout that film that's really weird. So we can assume there was a lot of meddling and a lot of disagreements. Now, I gotta be honest, I have no idea how it would be a thing that Bob Iger brings JJ back and gives JJ all this control, and then that control is ceded from him as the production went along. Like, wouldn't that create like this impossible situation where JJ could just walk away? Because I think really what's happening here is a lot of people are saying that like JJ is sort of being hung out to dry by Lucasfilm and sort of being blamed for the Rise of Skywalker and maybe even the trilogy. I mean, he did do 2 out of 3 of the films, but like this part where they're talking about how Marvel sees Warner Brothers as this big threat and they're trying to tarnish JJ's reputation, that's total crap. Like, that's just plainly, even if they heard that from somebody, it's crap. The people that are at the tippy top of Disney are way smarter than that. That's actually stupid, because number one, DC actually sucking so bad as of late, believe it or not, actually hurts Marvel movies. I know that might not be easy for people to understand, but frankly, if DC movies were better, Marvel movies would be potentially making even more money. Also, they know what Star Wars is and they know where Star Wars is at as a brand, and to think that they would do something to try to help Marvel at the cost of Star Wars is crazy. So there's at least some bullcrap in this leak. But again, there's some stuff in here that I do actually believe, and I do think that some of this probably happened. Like, the biggest thing here is that there was obviously a lot of shuffling, a lot of crazy stuff going on behind the scenes. I do feel as though the studio interfered when they shouldn't have. The most obvious one is the length. JJ would likely have zero problem making a 3-hour film. I know that he originally had like a 4-hour cut of TFA that he almost showed to the studio because he felt like it worked. And just in general, like creatives like JJ, they don't care. Like, they're not thinking about how many shows they can put into each theater and how much money they can make. They're thinking about how to tell their story. And the film very much needed more room to breathe. And some of the ideas of these scenes between Kylo and Rey and giving that more time to breathe, I think would have helped the film. Like, again, as someone that likes the movie, obviously that would have helped. And the only thing I can think of for reasons to cut that out is all suits. It's all corporate. It's just, how do we get more theater showings? How can we maximize profit? But again, that's not necessarily anything new to movie making. But I guess what I'm saying is I do believe there's a JJ cut, like 100%. I believe there's a JJ cut that is likely a way better film than what we got. And it's not even conspiratorial. This happens all the time. If you look at the cut of Batman v Superman and then you look at the director's cut of Batman v Superman, the director's cut is literally 10 times better as a film. Like, it has context, it has more character moments with Clark. It is a completely better film. And again, this always happens where studios are like, hey, great job telling that story. How can we gut some of that so we can make some more moolah? Now, again, what's really weird here is some of this sort of tends to corroborate even some of the scoops that Overlord DVD Doomcock had. So I actually think that most of what Doomcock talked about was crap, but some stuff that's in here makes me believe that there were likely different cuts of the film and that there was this big debate about which cuts and how to work that ending. I mean, frankly, like, it's not even a mystery. If you look at what was in the leaks, we know for damn sure they were editing and re-editing that ending like a million different ways, and it's just pretty obvious. Now, look, a lot of this can ultimately be laid at the feet of the leadership of Lucasfilm because there was no plan. There was just no plan with the trilogy, or what I mean to say is there was no concrete, singular creative vision for what this trilogy should have been. And that allowed Ryan to make the film that he made, and then JJ came back and tried to make a different film that really put things back into place for Star Wars fans. But look, when it comes to the sequel trilogy and when it comes to episode 9, there are so many questions. We need to know all of the dirty laundry. And so even though I don't think that 100% of what is in this leak is real, I certainly think it's worth talking about. And I do believe there is a JJ cut, and I badly want to see it. I'll likely enjoy the JJ cut of this film even more than I enjoyed the theatrical cut, which I know there's a lot of people that really don't like this film. And I get you, like, it's a crazy spot to be in. It sounds like Star Wars to me. But overall, guys, that's the leak. I want to know, like, what parts of it do you buy? What parts of it do you think are crap? Do you agree that there's likely a J.J. Abrams cut of this film out there? And would you like to see it? That's the important question. So let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. And now let's shout out James O'Gara. Indeed, Fing Fang Foom is the Marvel dragon that is said to be in the Shang-Chi movie. So shout out to you, James. And now let's ask another nerd card question before we get out of here. Let's go Old Republic. I want to know, what was the name of the dark side user that actually turned Revan and Malik first to the dark side? Very powerful person in Star Wars lore, perhaps even more powerful than Emperor Palpatine. But what is the name of that character that turned Revan and Malik to the dark side? Answer that question in the comment section below. As I always say, hope you're having an awesome and a nerdy day, and I'll see you in the next video.